Sloat said. I want the chicken head to do it. I can't use the Vidfone, Isadore protested, his heart labouring. Because I'm hairy, ugly, dirty, stooped, snaggle-toothed and grey. And also I feel sick from the radiation. I think I'm going to die. Milt smiled and said to Sloat, I guess if I felt that way, I wouldn't use the Vidfone either. Come on, Isadore. If you don't give me the owner's number, I can't make the call, and you'll have to. He held out his hand amiably. The chicken head makes it, Sloat said, or he's fired. He did not look either at Isadore or at Milt. He glared fixedly forward. Ah, come on, Milt protested. Isadore said, I don't like to be called a chicken head. I mean, the dust has done a lot to you too, physically. Although maybe not to your brain, as in my case. I'm fired, he realized. I can't make the call. And then, all at once, he remembered that the owner of the cat had zipped off to work. There would be no one home. I guess I can call him, he said, as he fished out the tag with the information on it. See, Mr. Sloat said to Milt. He can do it if he has to. Seated at the Vidfone receiver in hand, Isadore dialed. Yeah, Milt said. But he shouldn't have to. And he's right. The dust has affected you. You're damn near blind. And in a couple of years you won't be able to hear. Sloat said. In the vid screen a face appeared. A Mitteleuropäische, somewhat careful-looking woman who wore her hair in a tight bun. Yes, she said. Mrs. Pilson? Isadore said, terror spewing through him. He had not thought of it naturally, but the owner had a wife, who of course was home. I want to talk to you about your... He broke off, rubbed his chin tickwise. Your cat. Oh yes, you picked up Horace, Mrs. Pilson said. Did it turn out to be pneumonitis? That's what Mr. Pilson thought, Isadore said. Your cat died. Oh no, God in heaven. We'll replace it, he said. We have insurance. He glanced toward Mr. Sloat. He seemed to concur. The owner of our firm, Mr. Hannibal Sloat, he floundered, will personally... No, Sloat said. We'll give them a check, Sydney's list price. We'll personally pick the replacement cat out for you, Isadore found himself saying. Having started a conversation which he could not endure, he discovered himself unable to get back out. What he was saying possessed an intrinsic logic which he had no means of halting. It had to grind to its own conclusion. Both Mr. Sloat and Milt Gorogrove stared at him as he rattled on. Give us the specifications of the cat you desire, colour, sex, subtype, such as Manx, Persian, Abyssinian. Horace is dead, Mrs. Pilson said. He had pneumonitis, Isadore said. He died on the trip to the hospital. Our senior staff physician, Dr. Hannibal Sloat, expressed the belief that nothing at this point could have saved him. But isn't it fortunate, Mrs. Pilson, that we're going to replace him? Am I correct? Mrs. Pilson, tears appearing in her eyes, said, "There is only one cat like Horace. He used to, when he was just a kitten, stand and stare up at us as if asking a question. We never understood what the question was. Maybe now he knows the answer." Fresh tears appeared. "I guess we all will eventually." An inspiration came to Isadore. "What about an exact electric duplicate of your cat? We can have a superb handcrafted job by a wheelwright and carpenter, in which every detail of the old animal is faithfully repeated in permanent—" "Oh, that's dreadful!" Mrs. Pilson protested. "What are you saying? Don't tell my husband that. Don't suggest that to Ed, or he'll go mad. He loved Horace more than any cat he ever had, and he's had a cat since he was a child." Taking the Vidfone receiver from Isadore, Milt said to the woman, "We can give you a check in the amount of Sydney's list, or, as Mr. Isadore suggested, we can pick out a new cat for you. We're very sorry that your cat died, but as Mr. Isadore pointed out, the cat had pneumonitis, which is almost always fatal." His tone rolled out professionally. Of the three of them at the Van Ness Pet Hospital, Milt performed the best in the matter of business phone calls. "I can't tell my husband," Mrs. Pilson said. "All right, ma'am," Milt said, and grimaced slightly. "We'll call him. Would you give me his number at his place of employment?" He groped for a pen and pad of paper. Mr. Sloat handed them to him. "Listen," Mrs. Pilson said. She seemed now to rally. "Maybe the other gentleman is right. Maybe I ought to commission an electric replacement of Horace, but without Ed ever knowing. Could it be so faithful a reproduction that my husband wouldn't be able to tell?" Dubiously, Milt said, "If that's what you want. But it's been our experience that the owner of the animal is never fooled. It's only casual observers such as neighbors. You see, once you get real close to a false animal—" "Ed never got physically close to Horace, even though he loved him. I was the one who took care of all Horace's personal needs, such as his sandbox. I think I would like to try a false animal, and if it didn't work, then you could find us a real cat to replace Horace. I just don't want my husband to know. I don't think he could live through it. That's why he never got close to Horace. He was afraid to. And when Horace got sick with pneumonitis, as you tell me, Ed got panic-stricken and just wouldn't face it. That's why we waited so long to call you. Too long. As I knew before you called, I knew." She nodded, her tears under control now. "How long will it take?" Milt essayed. "We can have it ready in 10 days. We'll deliver it during the day while your husband is at work." He wound up the call and said goodbye and hung up. "He'll know," he said to Mr. Sloat, "in 5 seconds, but that's what she wants." "Owners who get to love their animals," Sloat said somberly, "go to pieces. I'm glad we're not usually involved with real animals. You realize that actual animal vets have to make calls like that all the time." He contemplated John Isadore. "In some ways, you're not so stupid after all, Isadore. You handle that reasonably well. even though Milt had to come in and take over. He was doing fine, Milt said. God, that was tough. He picked up the dead Horace. I'll take this down to the shop. Han, you phone Wheelwright and Carpenter and get their builder over to measure and photograph it. I'm not going to let them take it to their shop. I want to compare the replica myself. I think I'll have Isadore talk to them, Mr. Sloat decided. He got this started. He ought to be able to deal with Wheelwright and Carpenter after handling Mrs. Pilson. Milt said to Isadore, Just don't let them take the original. He held up Horace. They'll want to because it makes their work a hell of a lot easier. Be firm. Isadore said, blinking. Okay. Maybe I ought to call them now before it starts to decay. Don't dead bodies decay or something? He felt elated.